What's up you guys, Sasha here, and today I want to talk about the fastest way to get out of debt. Now let's start with a few statistics. According to the latest data, the total debt per household stands at a whopping £60,363. Now, if you divide that by the average number of adults per household, that equates to about £31,643 of debt per adult. Now, that does include a bunch of debt that isn't really short-term or mid-term debt, things like mortgages, other kinds of long-term debts. But even excluding that, about £9,400 per household is things like credit cards, loans and overdrafts. The absolutely mind-boggling figure is that the average person in the UK is spending over £1,000 a year just paying interest. If you're in a situation like this and you have debt and you're paying interest and you're in a vicious cycle of never seemingly being able to get out of it, here is the 10 steps that you can apply starting right now so that you can get out of debt. Step number 1 is to know your debt. Remember, not all debt is created equal. Importantly, things like mortgages should not be considered in the same vein as credit cards, loans, and other short-term, mid-term debts because they are financing an asset, and in many cases that asset is growing at a rate which is higher than the cost of the debt, in which case this is a constructive debt. This is not a debt that's actually losing you money every month. This is a debt that on average over the lifetime of that debt is actually going to make you money, which is a very, very different way of thinking about it. The short-term debts, these are the things where you have a credit card with a balance or you have a loan that you're repaying, and every single month it is straight out costing you money. There is no genuine benefit to having that debt. It's not creating any value, it's just causing misery. Start by doing something super simple. You can use paper, you can use Google Sheets or Excel, you can use one of the many money management websites. There are dozens, go and Google it. It doesn't really matter what you use for this because the concept is super simple. Go through your finances and list every single debt that you have in order with the amount that you owe and the interest you're paying for it. And remember, with credit cards, just go and check your statement because if you have multiple types of balance, different types of balance will have different interest rates, so make sure you write those down because it will help you in some of the following steps. Now, most people will have a mix. Maybe you have a few credit cards, maybe you have a loan or two, maybe you have an account where you're permanently in an overdraft. Write those things down, tot them up. I know it sounds incredibly scary. It sounds very, very scary when you add up all the total debt and it sounds, wow, this is a lot of money. How am I ever going to get out of it? But this is a crucial first step to getting out of debt. You need to understand exactly what your current debt position is so that then you can begin working on getting out of it one step at a time. Step number 2 is to understand your spending, and this is something a bit different. So the debt is the total amount you currently owe as a bulk number. Spending is the total monthly outgoings from your various different accounts. You need to understand exactly what you're spending money on so that then you can begin optimizing that number. The way to do it is this. Go through your current account, credit cards, any kind of account that you use regularly or irregularly, whatever it is, to purchase things, to spend money on, to pay bills, whatever it is, any money going out, go and look at those statements and write them all down. Now, I know that the credit card is not the same thing as a current account, but all of that is spending. So make sure you go and write down all the bills, all the regular purchases, all the various subscriptions that you have for things that aren't a one-off thing that happens in a month. So things that isn't a bill that comes out on the 12th, things like food purchases or clothes shopping and things like that. Go through the last 2 or 3 months worth of your statements and add them up and average them because you want to get as accurate a picture as possible. You don't want to lie to yourself. You're not actually going to help yourself by doing that. Go and take the averages down. You don't need to put the dates next to those averages, just put the totals, just so that you know what's coming out. Now here, you're doing something different to the budget that we're going to come to later. Here, make sure you write down every outgoing, even if you're technically double counting it. So for example, if on a credit card you go and buy £300 worth of food over the course of the month, and then you're making a minimum payment towards that credit card right now, which is mandatory, you can't not make the minimum payment, and let's say that minimum payment for you is £57. You are sort of double counting here because you're saying you're paying for the food on the credit card and then you're also paying the credit card with your current account, so actually you're spending £357. But in terms of your cash flow, in terms of the money movement today, it is important that you write them down. It doesn't matter that the 57 includes interest and part balance or whatever it is, you're just working out the cash flow for your personal financial position. You only need to do this for 1 month. So start at the beginning of the month, end at the end of the month. on an average month, based on the last few months worth of data that you've just analyzed, what is a spend? Write it all down. Once you've written them down, please make sure you hit the like button for this video. It really helps a small brand new channel like us reach more people. I really would appreciate it. Please go and do it right now if you haven't done so already. Step number 3 is where you're going to get a little bit creative. So now that you've written down all the different things that you're spending, go and write next to them. And this is where doing it in a spreadsheet is probably going to be a little easier because it will be easier to manage and move things around. Go and mark things as one of 3 categories. You can add more categories if you want, but to keep it super simple, just mark them as 1, essential, 2, nice to have, and 3, discretionary. I mean, you can give them better names if you like. For me, this works. It really just explains what these things are. So essential is things that you really can't stop paying in the short to medium term. You are either legally obliged to pay them or you need them to be able to live in your house or whatever it is. So things like utility bills, things like minimum credit card payments, things like council tax, any other thing like that that just has to come every single month. If you don't do it, you're going to get into some form of trouble, you're going to get into legal trouble or financial problems, whatever it is. Write those down as essential. You can't get rid of them. You probably can reduce some of them, you can probably affect some of them, but in the grand scheme of things, they're sort of fixed. The nice to haves are things that come out every month and you're sort of used to having access to those things and they make your life nice, but they're not really essential. Different people will have different boundaries as to what. So for example, is your Sky bill in the nice to have category, or is it completely discretionary? A lot of people will say that actually having access to a great number of channels, being able to record programs, watch them in the evenings, is quite an important part of life, because if you didn't have that, it would actually make things considerably less palatable. So for a lot of people, that'll be a nice to have. So it's not essential, but is somewhere above the discretionary category. So just go through and have a look and mark those as nice to haves. Discretionary spending is stuff that you're spending every month, but you probably could do without spending at all. So for example, if you have I don't know how much people spend on clothes. I don't really spend that much on clothes at all, but if you say you spend £100 a month on clothes, that would probably classify discretionary spending, because if you didn't spend that for 1 month, literally probably nothing would happen. There'd be absolutely no serious negative effect in your life. It would not really impact you in any way whatsoever. You probably wouldn't notice it. Nobody else would definitely notice it at all. So that is definitely one of those discretionary types of spend. So if you're serious about getting out of debt and you really want to get acting fast, the number 1 thing you can do is either entirely or almost entirely remove everything that you've just classified as discretionary.
Really? Really?
If you've told yourself that, hey, if I don't spend this money in the next month, nothing really will happen, nothing will change in my life, I won't be personally very affected, you can probably cut it out. I know that sometimes you have to go and buy something like some clothes or whatever it is, or you might after a few weeks want to go and grab some lunch with some friends and spend a little bit of money that you don't really have to spend. Sure, that's probably okay. You have to kind of answer to yourself. But in the grand scheme of things, the discretionary spend that you're spending all the time, just cut it out. Immediately you have improved your budgetary position. Immediately you've bought yourself that extra amount of money that you can do something with. Next, go through the nice to haves and just go and see if you can either slash them entirely, in most cases you probably won't, or at least reduce them. There are several ways of doing that. Now, number 1 way is to go and say, do I need the full amount of the service that I'm buying, or can I only get a part? So for example, if you have a Sky subscription, many people will have old subscriptions which include movies, which include a bunch of other stuff. Do you actually use all the components of that? Do you watch the movies, or do you actually only ever use Netflix now? Do you watch the various different extra packages that you pay for? If not, you can cut them out. Same goes for lots of other nice to have spending. You can probably go and look at it and say, do I really need all of this? Or do I only need a part of it because that's the only part I actually use? The second thing you can do is go and just renegotiate, find new prices, find new suppliers. Now, this often is something that people put off. They can't be bothered to do it, but you can do it in an hour or two on lots of this nice to have spending and suddenly find that you're paying significantly less. In fact, you can do it on some of the essential compulsory spending too. So things like energy bills. When was the last time you went and changed that? You can probably go and save quite a considerable amount of money by just spending an hour, or less than that in some cases, and just finding the best deal that you can get, switching yourself to it, and stop paying the extra for no reason whatsoever. If we go back to the same example I used earlier, companies like Sky, other companies that have subscription services regularly release new offers, new deals. Like if you have broadband, you'll probably find the same thing. If you have telephone, if you have mobile phone contracts, often these new deals will offer you considerably better stuff for considerably less money. And certainly for new customers, they will be offering much better deals than they do to existing customers in many ways to try to attract them. Go and take out a new deal that will give you the same stuff that you're currently getting for less money, either with the same provider by phoning them and negotiating. I do this all the time. You just go and phone them and say, I'm going to cancel unless I can get the same deal as the new customers. This is the one I want. After enough minutes of you just repeating that, they usually will let you take that. It's important when you're doing this third step that you don't skip the small bits. Oh, it's just a £5 cup of coffee. Oh, it's whatever. The small things in this step really add up. Make sure you add every single penny that's coming out of your account, because you'll be surprised by how £5 here, £15 there suddenly add up over a 30-day period. All right, we're on to step number 4, and this is quite a crucial step. It is forming your budget. Now, this sounds incredibly difficult, but actually, if you follow step number 3, and especially if you've done it in a spreadsheet, step number 4 becomes relatively easy. All you have to do is go and take the spend items that you've just taken, and instead of just doing day of the month in the column on the left, go and do the actual date starting this month, next month, whenever you want to start your budget from. So go and input all of those into your budget. That's your first month's worth of spending. Next, go and take your incomes, again, add them to the same table with the dates against which your income comes in. Bang, you have 1 month's worth of budget. Now, one thing you need to make sure here is that this is your budget. This is not the place where you're doing a net financial position estimate. You're not trying to figure out how to repay your debt. You're just figuring out money in, money out. So don't double count here. So things that are not coming out of your current account, but for example, you're spending money on food on a credit card. If that is not directly coming out of your current account, don't put it in your budget, because your budget is not the same thing as trying to figure out what your net debt movement is. You're trying to figure out, am I going to have money in my bank account at a particular date based on all my different spending? So in the case of a credit card, go and put the repayment of the credit card into your budget. Don't put the other things. Now, what you now do is, now that you have 1 month's worth of this data, go and copy it down and add the dates for the following months. This is very easy. You can use one of the tools online to do it. It'll probably take you much longer, and they're usually incredibly complicated. You have to enter a million different things in order for it to do that, and even then it probably won't be as accurate as this. Just copy it down up to 5 or 6 times so you get the next 6 months worth of your budget down. Go and add the dates, make sure that they flow for every month correctly, and then just sort it by date. That's it. You have a budget which will tell you your money flow from your current account into your current account for the next 6 months. Step number 5 is to pay less interest on your debt. Now, I know it's easy to say that, this applies to some of the steps, but a lot of people might find themselves really pleasantly surprised by how much you can reduce your interest on the existing debts that you have. So generally, there are only 2 things that you really need to do. Look at all of your credit card debt and go and consider if you can move those to a 0% balance transfer deal. Now, on average over time, these range between 2 and 3 year terms, and typically they come with a fee at the beginning. Now, the fee will be 3%, sometimes a little bit higher, and generally that's the only thing you're gonna have to pay for the entire duration of that balance transfer. So if you have a credit card debt where you're paying 69, 89, 20.9% interest every single year on that debt, you can take that entire balance, move it to a different credit card, pay the one-off fee of say 3%, and then you'll have to pay nothing for 3 years or 2 years or whatever it is. So you're paying about 1 to 1.5% effective interest in return. It takes a very small amount of time. Go on one of the comparison websites and go and check your eligibility. Once you've done that, you will save yourself considerable amounts of interest payments, which you can then use to go and repay your debts a lot more quickly. If you have any other form of debt, so things like loans, car finance, anything else like that, the cheapest thing you can do with those is to move them via a money transfer onto a 0% money transfer credit card. This is something that lots of people aren't aware of. A lot of people will talk about refinancing, etc., but actually money transfer deals can be significantly cheaper than any kind of loan you can take out. I'm going to link a separate video below which will tell you all about how you can do that, but in essence you can be paying 1 to 2% interest effectively on the same debt by moving it onto a money transfer credit card. Again, you can go and do that through some of the comparison websites. Just go and check. If you can't get one of these top 0% credit cards, go and consider consolidation loans. The reason consolidation loans really work really well is because loans are typically priced considerably cheaper if you're getting a larger one, typically over about £7,500. So if you have several different debts, which are £1,000, £2,000, £3,000, you can go and add them all up and put them onto one loan, which is say £12,000 in total. The interest rate on that loan can be as low as 3% or thereabouts, sometimes 3 to 4%. But that is often much, much, much less than the individual ones that you have, which are low, which can be 15, 25% or even higher. And if you can do that, you're suddenly immediately wasting considerably less money every single month. At number 6, we have this step that everyone likes to talk about and nobody ever does. It's called selling stuff. Now, how much stuff do you have in your house that you have no need for, you haven't used for years, you don't know why it's there, it's occupying space that actually you would probably prefer to use for something else, it's just been there, sitting there, doing absolutely nothing and gathering dust. I'm talking things like old mobile phones that are lying in a drawer somewhere that you've put there 3 years ago and it's still lying there in exactly the same place. I'm talking about things like that old juicer that's sitting in the utility room or in the corner of your kitchen or whatever it is, that's just sitting there. You've never made juice with it. Maybe you made it once or twice when you first bought it and it's just been sitting there for a long time. You can get rid of these things super quickly. You can get rid of all of these things within a month, probably within a week. You can go onto eBay and list those things and just put them out for free, starting at 1 penny, whatever it is. Give them good photos, description. Somebody will want them. Whatever you don't want, I can guarantee you there is a bunch of people out there who would pay you a reasonable amount of money to get it. For things that are tech, things like phones, things like old broken laptops, whatever it is, there are specialist companies out there that will pay you considerable amounts of money for stuff that you think is pure junk. Even if the phone doesn't turn on, has a cracked screen, whatever, they're still going to pay you money because a lot of the internal components that they have are actually valuable because of the things that they're made of. You can go on some comparison websites and go and check exactly what different people will pay you. Go and look at reviews because some of the companies are a lot less nice to deal with than others. But generally speaking, you can get £50 to £100 for lots of old phones, and that's £50 to £100 you can get in your pocket this month for something that is worthless. And if you leave it for another few years, will become absolutely worthless to anybody, not just you. So go and just get rid of these things. Free up space in your house, get some money. It is an incredibly nice feeling to get rid of this old junk. Alright, we're on to step number 7, and this is the one where you're actually going to begin paying down your debt using the money that you've just made from either selling stuff, from paying less interest, from budgeting properly and cutting out non-essential spend. Whatever money you have left over in the month, put it towards repaying your debt. Generally speaking, there are 3 strategies that people talk about. I'm going to start with the 2 that are very commonly talked about, especially by so-called experts, and I'm going to tell you the best strategy afterwards because it just is the fastest way to repaying your debt. A really, really popular one on the internet, you'll see lots of YouTube videos about it, is called the snowball method. This is one that famous online finance people like Dave Ramsey recommend all the time. They say this is the best way to do it because of the psychology of it. And the way the snowball method works is you repay debt in order of lowest amount first. Now, although I actually strongly disagree with the premise here, the argument is something a bit like this. If you have 10 different forms of debt and one of them is just £70 and you're repaying that at, I don't know, £5 or £10 a month, if you get rid of it, you have one less debt and suddenly your mind is more clear, you have less payments going out, and you mentally get one step closer to getting out of debt. And that supposedly is going to help you focus and go for the next one. Now, the problem with this method is if your lower balances are considerably cheaper than the higher ones, you're just ending up paying considerably more money by doing it. It doesn't actually get you there faster. In fact, it will get you a lot slower if you have different forms of debt at different rates. The next really popular method is to go by highest cash flow outgoing first. And what this means is if you look at your debts and you look at which of these debts is taking the most money out of your current account every single month, go and repay that one first. Now, this sounds a little bit similar to the first method, but it's sort of the opposite, and this one's still not as good as the good method I'm about to get to. It is much, much better than the first one though. So for example, if you have a loan which is costing you £270 every single month and you have a credit card where you're only paying £40 a month, you might want to go and get rid of the loan first, even if it's a little bit cheaper than the credit card. And the reason here is actually semi-viable. The reason here is if you get rid of these large amounts of money that are coming out of your account every month a little bit quicker, you have more flexibility and more freedom to then be able to go and tackle the other debts with a much larger pile of cash. So if you don't have to pay that £270 a month because the loan's been cleared and repaid, you can then direct that money more effectively towards other debts and clear them more quickly. Mentally, I quite like this kind of thinking. It's still not the most effective. And the most effective method is pay the highest interest debt first. The way to do it is to go back to the sheet that you made right at the beginning of this whole exercise where you wrote all your debts and go and look at the highest interest rate that any of your current balances have. Make sure with credit cards you check the individual balances. So if you have some cash on a credit card and the credit card APR is 18.9%, APR is the purchase interest rate on a credit card. The cash might be actually costing you 29.9 or even higher percent. So go and check that and go and find the one balance that is the highest out of all the different ones. Remember, with a credit card, if you make a payment to it, the law says that they have to apportion that payment to the highest interest-bearing balance first. So if you have a credit card that has a cash balance or a money transfer balance or a balance transfer balance where the rate is higher than the purchase, that will be paid off first. So what you do now is you go and pay the highest interest debt first until it's cleared. If you have a small balance on a credit card that is cash or whatever, go and pay that first. Once you've cleared that, go and look for the next highest one. Continue doing that all the time until you repay the individual debt that you're currently tackling. Then go and look through your list again and go and tackle the next one. This method ensures that you're tackling the debt that is currently costing you in terms of actual money every single month the most, and this is absolutely hands down the fastest way that you can repay debt. If you follow this strategy and you actually do all the other steps that I'm talking about, you will get out of debt faster than by doing one of the other methods. It's maths. All right, number 8, and this is quite critical when you compare it to the previous one, it is do not get into more debt. Now I know you're going to say, hey Sasha, it's easy to say that, but I need money for whatever it is and I don't have it, so sometimes I have to borrow, I have to dip into one of these loans that I always get or whatever it is. Really, really, really have a think. Do you absolutely have to borrow? If you can get away without borrowing any more money, please do get away without borrowing it. It will help you get out of debt. The fastest way to fail with repaying debt is to just build up a pile of debt over there while you're repaying this debt over here, and net your position doesn't change. No matter what you're telling yourself, no matter how you're trying to position it in your mind, if you're building up debt while repaying debt, you're not actually making any progress. If your car is running fine, it's not costing you a crazy amount of money to maintain, even if it's old, even if it's unsightly, even if you don't really like it much, keep the car. You do not need to go and buy a new car. Your kitchen is probably just fine as it is. You do not need to remodel it. You don't need to upgrade the doors. You don't need to go and replace things just because they're scratched. Your objective is to repay debt, so don't go against that objective. If you're looking to go on holiday, go and consider the cheaper options of staycations, going on a road trip and camping somewhere. You might be incredibly surprised by how great the time you spend together as a family is when you're doing things that don't cost a crazy amount of money, where you're not traveling halfway around the world to get there, when you're not paying extortionate hotel and flight fees and whatever it is. Just go and consider how can you spend considerably less money for the next year, 2 years, whatever it is it's going to take you to make a considerable dent in the debt that you're currently carrying. Then you'll feel so much better and you'll have so much more disposable income with which you can do whatever you want once you got out of the debt in the first place. We're on to step number 9, and if you watched any of my other videos, you probably know what's coming. You should consider making more money. Now I know what you're thinking, I know I can hear you saying it already.
But Sasha, it's so easy for you to say to just make more money.
There are a lot of ways that you can make more money. I have a whole separate video, again I'm going to link to it below, where I describe 11 different ways that you can make money in a side hustle. But you can probably go and do more than just that. Have you considered looking at new jobs? When was the last time you actually went and changed a job or applied for a new job? A lot of people stay in exactly the same job for many, many years and don't consider that somewhere out there might be a better paying position, that might be better for their professional development, that might be better for their livelihood, for whatever, and they will never know because they don't apply. Go and see if you can go and apply. Applying costs nothing. In the modern day, when there's things like LinkedIn and various big online job boards, it can take seconds. It can take seconds to just go and create your profile and go and click on things. Submit your CV and see what happens. Go and do an interview if you have to do an interview. You might surprise yourself. In some cases, the upper limiting problem of thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to get that job, is exactly the reason that's stopping you. But in many, many cases, it won't actually be true. So why not go and have a go? If you don't want to do that, go and consider having a second job, even if it's just £50 a month or £100 a month for a very small amount of work on the side. You can put that entire amount of money to repaying your debt and make a considerably quicker dent in repaying it. So now that we've got this far, you're probably wondering, what is step number 10? We've kind of covered everything really up till now, and step number 10 is probably the most important of all the steps that I've got in this list, and it is rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat every single month the steps that we've just covered, because if you don't, you will fall back to old habits, you will fall out of the optimal line for repaying your debt. So what I mean by this is every single month, go and look at your budget, go and look at your debts, go and list them, go and look at where your most expensive debt is, go and consider other ways that you can make more money, go and consider selling some old junk that you haven't sold last month. All of these steps, keep repeating them every single month. You don't have to do it every day is excessive. You probably don't really have to do it every week because it will be just too much at the forefront of your mind and it might affect how you just go about your daily lives, but go and do it regularly. Every month is good. If you want to do it more frequently, that's up to you, but make sure you keep yourself on track, you stay focused on the point that you're trying to get to, and you keep working at it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you stick it out and you follow these 10 steps to getting out of debt. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be releasing a lot more videos all about managing your money, improving your financial position, and getting better with it. If you like this video, please make sure you do hit that like button and smash that bell to get notifications every time one of my videos comes out. I will see you guys in the next video.